Hey folks, thank you for coming to this session. Our topic for today is leading DevOps transformation with gamification. My name is Ravi Devineni. I'm from Northwestern Mutual. You can see my information there. I work on a team called DevOps Engineering at NM. Our job is to create tools and processes for CICD and DevOps, tools that enable development teams to ship applications faster and in a more secure way. I want to thank Continuous Delivery Foundation for putting this event together and giving me an opportunity to present some ideas here. A little bit about my company. Northwestern Mutual is a financial services company headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We started as a mutual in 1857, established for the benefit of the policy owners. 165 years later, today we're a Fortune 90 company with more than 4.9 million clients. So we're still a mutual, but we have a unique culture deeply dedicated to helping people achieving financial security. NM is the largest direct provider of life insurance in the United States, and we have high degrees of customer satisfaction with 97% of policy owners coming back year after year. In addition to all of that, right, we have a lot of challenging problems to solve. We have some amazing technologies that we're using in cloud and DevOps, so we're trying to bring digital transformation to a 160-year-old company, a very inclusive and diverse workplace as well. So the agenda for today, right? So we want to talk about the problem. What does it mean to do DevOps, right? What does DevOps transformation mean, right? What are some various methodologies? What does the industry say about this, right? And what are some of the metrics that we could use to focus on? And we'll talk about some gamification methodologies that we've used, the philosophy behind it, the tools that we've implemented at our company to get our company moving in the right direction. I'd love to have some questions at the end as well, because I haven't seen much of that. So what does it mean to do DevOps, right? So before we talk about the problem, right? I think, Christopher, you talked about this in your previous talk as well, right? This is a definition basically you and I both copied from AWS documentation. And some of this was covered at the keynote yesterday as well. I'm not going to read it, but I've highlighted some key parts of the definition, right? DevOps is a set of cultural philosophies. DevOps is a set of practices. And then DevOps is a set of tools. A combination of all of these will help organizations deliver business value faster to the market. This idea also aligns with this Agile manifesto, which says individuals and interactions are more important than process and tools. So we're saying that DevOps is a set of cultural philosophies, and Christopher was touching on some of these earlier. Then the question becomes, what are those philosophies, right? A few things I listed out here. Shared responsibility, right? This is an extremely important aspect, right? In this model, the developers don't think that operations is not their responsibility, and vice versa. There are no silos here, right? The teams are autonomous, which means everything that the team needs to do to deliver something, all the skills that the team needs, is in the team. Ownership and accountability, next one. This is a corollary to the above point, right? This is a model which says, you build it, you own it. You own it, you support it. Like if you own something, you own it end to end, including the customer experience, post-production, any feedback, and all of that. Systems thinking is another important one. When we think about software systems, right, we think about them holistically. As a front-end developer doesn't think about just the screens that they're building, right? Or a back-end developer doesn't think about APIs or back-end. All of them are collectively trying to solve the problem, trying to challenge each other, thinking about the system holistically. A continual experimentation and learning is another important one. A learning organization is a very effective organization, right? People who work for organizations like that are generally happier. Such companies are a lot more competitive. They are a lot more adaptive to change as well. They obtain new customers because they're constantly doing experimentation and getting feedback from the customers. The next one is automation first mindset. This is about saving money on automating manual processes, right? This is about reducing toil a typical SRE faces. But not just that, right? Automation first mindset calls for a holistic solution to major business problems using automation. Uber, for example, right? Their customer support platform, it's completely automated, right? There's no human involved. They could have taken the traditional approach and gone with having a bunch of call centers manned with people answering phones and stuff, but they didn't do that. They went out and that wouldn't have scaled anyway, right? They went out with a more radical approach. They said, how do we build a system that doesn't have any human intervention at all? So that's the mindset for automation first mindset I'm referring to. So DevOps is a set of cultural philosophies. DevOps is a set of technical practices, right? Modern technical practices. So if you look at this, I listed out a few here. Each of these practices basically underlines a cultural aspect we just talked about. Continuous integration, for example, right? It is about reducing communication overhead. It's about getting fast feedback. When someone breaks a build, right, the entire team swarms on it and prioritizes fixing that build. This is accountability displayed in real life. This is collective responsibility displayed in real life. You can see the business outcomes also. They're all positive. We can take one more. Deployment automation, for example, right? It takes the pain away from releasing code, right? Makes the releases extremely routine and boring. What happens, right, when releases are routine and boring, right? There are a lot of possibilities. Teams can experiment. Feature flags, right? We can release some features to a small set of customers and gather early feedback on usage patterns, viability of new business ideas and stuff, right? So stuff like that. So DevOps is a set of modern technical practices. DevOps is a set of tools that enable technical practices we just touched upon earlier, right? Modern tools that enable modern technical practices. This is just an example of the tools at various stages of the software development lifecycle. There's a lot of options at this stage, obviously in each stage. Every company needs to select tools that fit their needs, and there's a lot more out in the market, you can see. So what is the problem? The problem can be broken down into 3 statements, right? How do you change the culture of a large organization, right? Especially at organizations that typically do weekend releases once every 3 months or so. How do you change the behavior of a large number of engineers, right? Typically large organizations have anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 employees working on various things, right? And how do you change tools, especially at large organizations that have been doing technology for many decades, right? Large organizations are typically where no tool is ever truly retired. So what do? So whenever we're faced with a problem, we look outside, right, to see if someone else has solved this problem. Because what smart people do is they solve problems and they write books about it, and then they give speeches about it too, like the Google folks from yesterday. So what does the industry say about this? So the keynote touched up on this a little bit. So we looked at a few things here, right? There's obviously Accelerate book, State of DevOps. The authors are pretty famous folks, and they have written other books as well. State of DevOps 2021, someone talked about that earlier. Here are a few takeaways, right? Capabilities model of measurement is essential for organizations. So saying that here's a set of capabilities, and the teams will get measured on how well they're doing on each of them, right? And there are 24 such capabilities that drive improvement. Accelerate book has that. 4 metrics to measure software delivery performance. 4 categories of performers: low, medium, high, and elite. High performers always strive for both speed and stability. Strive is the key word here. They strive not because their organization is telling them to do it, right? They strive because they are pursuing excellence in whatever field they are in, right? And the way to change culture is by changing how people behave, right? Social element plus competitive element is how you drive people's engagements. These are some of the takeaways. And these are the 24 key capabilities listed in that Accelerate book, right? There are things such as trunk-based development, shifting security to the left, even transformational leadership. Leadership plays an important part in this. We'll touch upon that again at the end. These are the 4 keys that Google folks mentioned yesterday. And the first 2, lead time, deployment frequency, these are metrics related to speed. They're in blue. The last 2, mean time to restore and change failure percentage, are related to stability. They're in green, right? Because we want all our systems to be green. There are 4 categories of performers, right? High, medium, low, and elite, and how they perform across those 4 metrics is given here. Interestingly, the color coding is reversed on this one. So my last bullet point earlier, social element and competitive element combined is how you drive people's behavior and hence change, right? This is a concept that's called gamification. So here's the definition. Gamification is the act of changing human behavior by making activities more enjoyable, by making them into more game-like, right? So we'll go first into what gamification is not, right? It's not about playing video games. You don't get paid for playing video games. This is what I tell my son. It's not a magic wand that fixes everything too, right? Expectations that we create a dashboard and things will happen magically and our problems are solved, it's not realistic. And it's definitely not about creating competition, right, or instant gratification, right? Healthy competition is good, but competition in a negative sense will lead almost always to negative outcomes. So what is it really, right? It is about reinventing performance measurement systems, basically. Gone are the days when you work for a whole year and then your boss comes at the end of the year and talks about your performance feedback and give a bonus and stuff. This is about creating effective ways of feedback, right? This is about creating tools that create excitement about seemingly routine tasks, seemingly mundane tasks. It is about creating collaboration and collective problem solving, right? This is exceedingly common in everything we see these days, and we'll go into a few real-life examples here. This is Bank of America. Most people are probably familiar with this. They have something called Preferred Rewards Program, and they have multiple reward tiers, right, depending on how much money you keep in the Bank of America system. Each tier comes with its own benefits, right? Benefits such as higher interest rates on your savings accounts and free ATM withdrawals, lower mortgage rates, and stuff like that. And as you can see, they have consolidated all of their business offerings in this program. So if we think about it, typically savings accounts is a completely different line of business from, let's say, credit cards, right? And investment banking is a completely different line of business from mortgages. And they've consolidated all of it here in this program. They essentially want your entire financial life centered with them. I didn't find this information anywhere, but pretty sure Bank of America increased their revenue by a lot after they rolled this out. And why not, right? Like why would we not go with a bank that rewards our behaviors? We typically go with credit cards that have the highest cashback and things like that. Another example, this is Starbucks. Every time you drink coffee at Starbucks, you get rewarded with stars. And rewards are based on the number of stars you accumulate. You can earn 1 star per dollar, but there's more. Depending on how you pay, you can earn more stars per dollar. Like if you use their prepaid card, 2 stars. If you use their credit card, 3 stars. But what they really want you is to give them more money, whether or not you drink coffee, essentially, right? Like credit cards and investment are totally different lines of business, and they have nothing to do with coffee, which is what Starbucks sells. So they are trying to become a bank. Ever since they started this rewards program, Starbucks' revenue went up by $3.6 billion a year. And that's just scratching the surface, right? So you will see examples of this all over the place if you start noticing. There's loyalty programs, leaderboards on your health app, on your Apple Watch, badges of achievement, and the food that you eat, and the shoes that you wear, they're just everywhere. So it's really a powerful idea, right? So we started thinking, how do we apply this to our jobs, right? How do we use this idea to change how we do CI/CD and stuff? So we did a couple of things. We started a program called CI/CD Pipeline Certification. Similar to Bank of America, we wanted to come up with a maturity model, if you may, right? Something for the teams to aspire to as they made progress in their journey, but also accomplishments along the way, right? So we looked at what are the activities involved in a team, right? What are the daily activities that team is doing from commit to production, right? And these are all the technical practices that I talked about earlier, but at a more granular level. And these are basically activities that developers do on a daily basis, right? Things such as code commits, merge requests, unit tests, build failures, deployments, and things like that. And we took some of those activities and came up with 3 tiers of achievement. And we said, we will give you badges of honor if you meet the criteria, right? And we created bronze, silver, and gold and defined each level. Like for example, bronze is that you're doing all the application development basics correctly, right? We'll go into more details in the next set of slides, but silver is that you have security shifted to the left and you have fast feedback loops implemented in your pipeline. And gold is basically the ultimate standard of continuous delivery, right? Which when a team makes a commit and that commit goes to production with all the gates, with all the tests built in, with 0 human interaction, that's the gold standard of continuous delivery. We're talking about continuous deployment at that point, right? Your deployment is completely automated. So this is bronze. So you can see all of this is basic stuff, right? You're not able to make a commit to the main branch, for example. Your merge requests need approval. You cannot approve your own merge request, for example, right? Your project has a pipeline built in. That means your build is entirely automated. You cannot use your personal ID to push to main branch. These are all the fundamentals of application development process, basically. And before I talk about silver and gold, I want to show something else, right? This is a UI that we built for this, right? In that UI, we listed out a few criteria. Not just that, right? We also wanted to give why this criteria is important, right? For example, merge requests cannot be approved by the author. Why is that important? Because we need peer code review, because code reviews are important. Code reviews are good for improving, product quality and improving shared knowledge and developer collaboration, right? And this is there for everyone to see, so there is no questions or ambiguity on why a certain criteria is there or why it's important, right? This is silver. Silver is about adding more feedback-related themes in your pipeline, things such as code linting, code quality scanning, static scanning, container scanning, license dependency scanning. There's a lot of other things that we could do there. Increasing your unit testing to a certain level, adding change management, automated change management. Fast feedback is a theme here, like I said, identifying issues earlier in the pipeline, because the later we find them, the more expensive it is to fix it. And finally, gold, right? I talked about gold standard briefly, and you can see them here. Automatic deployments to production. The pipeline stops on failed jobs, right? This is to make sure, in case some errors happen or your tests fail, you don't accidentally deploy some bugs into production. And in the UI we built, we also provided a progress indicator. This is an example of a project that has bronze, for example. You can see the bronze is green there. And in your journey to silver, how far along are you? And this is indicated by all the green checks. So in this example, this team has 2 more things that are left to do in order to attain silver, right? And also they made some progress towards gold as well, like 2 of those 7 things are already taken care of. And there are also buttons that we've created on the left side to opt out of certain projects, because there are obviously business cases where all teams can't participate in this, right? And also a recertify button, right, that essentially evaluates the project again, right? For example, you can work on that 6th item in that list, finish it, and then click that button, and you will see that item turn to green, right? That's basically instant feedback, instant gratification, right there. Next thing is we didn't want our model to be a once and done model, right? Like bronze, silver, and gold are not something that you attain and you're done with your journey at that point. So we said we need to constantly raise the bar, right? We keep on adding new criteria, basic ones, advanced ones, across all the 3 tiers. And I think this is extremely important. There are criteria like automated rollback and canary testing and additional types of testing in the pipeline, things such as performance testing, integration and functional testing, all sorts of things like that. Canary testing, these are pretty complex many of these are pretty complex for teams to implement, but at least it gives them a direction for them to do what's next. Leaderboards is another thing that we did. What Leaderboards is simply a list of scores from top to bottom, right? It's a visual representation of a competition. Social comparison happens here, right? People can relate to how they're doing in comparison to others and set goals for themselves. So it encourages teams to make progress on their own. But not only that, right? What it also does is it throws some light on teams that are struggling to move forward. These are the teams that are at the bottom of the list, right? Why? Not because we want to humiliate them or demotivate them, right? It is so that we can allocate some resources, extra resources, to help those teams out, right? It is more like it's a great opportunity for those teams to make progress. So implement leaderboards across the board. Number of vulnerabilities resolved, number of code quality issues resolved, number of bugs resolved. Cloud cost is another interesting thing, right? You want the team with the lowest expense at the top there. So in all this process, right, there are some key lessons that we learned. And this is the crux of my message. So this has a lot to do with the philosophy, Chris, you were mentioning earlier. So we said DevOps is first about culture, technical practices, then tools, right? Tools is mentioned at the end. But we should not underestimate the value of good tools, right? We cannot do continuous delivery if we are stuck with age-old tools. We need the tools to be pretty modern, pretty cloud native, right? And there's a lot of tools that I listed in my previous slide that fit the bill, basically. And we shouldn't think that we could use tools from 1980s, 1990s and still do continuous delivery, because that's just not how it works. So if you want to really transform DevOps at your org, first start looking at the tools that you have and see if they compare, right? Also, if you have multiple tools that do the same job, that's a problem. Like SCM, for example, source control, right? Like if you have multiple SCM systems, you have fragmented source control, like some source code living in one place and some source code living in another place, right? Your developer permissions are fragmented too. Some developers have access to some code, some other developers have access to other code, right? It affects your developer collaboration. Let's say if a developer creates a common shared library that everybody could use, that could be used across all of your software, right? Where do you put that, right? Questions like that. How do we make sure it's not being duplicated? Multiple tools mean more maintenance, obviously, and more users need to be given access to both the tools, multiple tools, so your licensing costs are multiplied. Same with all other tools, like standardization is critical. So if a team decides to release software, they shouldn't be picking tools in the supply chain, right? They should know exactly what to do, what to use. So the tools need to be standardized. Next one, leadership buy-in. This is crucial, right? Grassroots efforts are amazing. I love them. But if you're talking about a large organization, your grassroots efforts can only go so far, right? Nothing beats leadership buy-in. Having a technology leadership that understands the importance of continuous delivery, what it means to the business and how it helps, it is priceless. It cannot be overstated. The gamification approach we talked about is basically a carrot approach, right? What we're saying is we'll give you a bronze carrot, a silver carrot, and stuff like that. But all carrots and no sticks is going to be a problem because sticks are as important as carrots because in a large organization, there's a lot of things that are happening, right? There's multiple teams. Every team has their own priorities. Nobody has time to improve themselves unless there is some enforcement that's happening. So enforcement approach is essential for teams, right? We have to be able to make organizational policies such as you need container scanning for your Docker build images, right? You need to resolve all your critical vulnerabilities before you deploy anything to production, things like that. So organizational compliance must be enforced. This is a powerful lesson I learned. The next one is we tend to underestimate the power of daily activities, right? I'm referring to daily activities such as code commits, merge requests, deployments, releases, monitoring, all of those things, right? But this goes way beyond that. This is applicable to life in general, right? Like we generally refer to outcomes, the 4 DORA metrics, or how many clients we got in the last quarter, or how much revenue we generate, and things like that. But these outcomes, they don't happen magically, right? This is similar to gardening, right? If we want to grow flowers, we don't necessarily think about flowers. We don't meditate on flowers. We think about soil. We think about seeding. We think about getting our hands dirty. We think about sunshine. We think about watering, fertilizing, and we think about doing those activities on a daily basis with diligence and persistence. The outcome of that disciplined activity is the flowers, right? The flowers are a measure of success. So how well we do those daily activities is extremely important. And finally, right, patience is a virtue. Transforming large organizations, it doesn't happen overnight, and it takes time, and like I said, a lot of diligence, a lot of persistence, and a lot of patience. That's all I have. Happy to take any questions. Any questions, folks? Go ahead.
You mentioned leadership buy-in is crucial. So at JP Morgan, we have something similar, but across many metrics with mandatory. So what is it going to take for Northwestern Mutual to get everyone's opt-in?
What does it take, or what did it take? What would it take? Can you? Yeah.
So at JP Morgan, we have a similar kind of gamification process set for it's mandatory. So we measure across many different types of metrics. It looks like in your firm, teams can opt in, and you mentioned leadership buy-in is crucial. Have they bought into this, and is this something you're looking to mandate across the firm? So.
Yeah, one of the things that I said was your technology leadership needs to be savvy, right? If they are not, there is very little chance of making progress. Like your technology leadership needs to understand this. That is crucial. Like if they don't, it is your responsibility as a leader, as a DevOps leader, to make that happen, right? Because once you do that, things happen more smoothly, like things happen magically, because there is top-down mandates that can be done, right? Like you can say tech initiatives, like every year, everybody has to do so much tech debt or so many improvements, and those kinds of things can be mandated at an organizational level, from the CTO down to all the VPs and all of that. So it's extremely crucial to have that. Does that answer your question? Yeah, it takes like what is the value, right? What are the other organizations doing, and how do we benefit from doing all of those practices? It just takes, a leader to go and tell them, to convince them that this is important. And there are advocates too, like a lot of people who have been doing, like your developer advocates. They are people who are savvy. They could be your advocates too, right? People who have been doing continuous delivery, people who do trunk-based development. You should consider them as your advocates as well. More questions? Go ahead.
So as you build out gamification and you look at metrics, have you run into any problems where you've started gamification and it's actually driven the wrong behaviors and it's driven people to gamify the system themselves just to get maybe those rewards like badges, whatever it is?
Yeah, it happens, right? It happens definitely. There are cases where we said number of bronze, number of silver, and we will like give you some extra point systems. There's a point system of awards and stuff that we have. So people game the system, right? But does that happen all the time? No. There's a lot of people who are trying to do the right thing, because I was talking about how good people, high performers, strive for excellence because they pursue excellence, right? Not because of the rewards that come with it. So there's a lot of people, right? Like you have to hire right, obviously. There's definitely bad apples, people who have opted for exceptions, like out of hundreds of exceptions, they have done that. So it happens, but it's just like collateral damage at this point. Like you have to, 95% success is good. Like 90% success is good. More questions? Okay, thank you guys.